A human warrior ignored the alien princess because she was a crippled invalid. The transport ship landed with a heavy thud on the crystal platform of Zephria Prime. Commander Jake Sullivan stepped out into the alien world, his military boots clicking against the smooth, translucent surface. The air was thin but breathable, and everything around him seemed to glow with a soft blue light that came from deep within the crystal structures. Jake was not impressed by the beauty. He had seen many worlds, fought on dozens of battlefields, and learned long ago that pretty planets could hide the ugliest wars. He was here for business. Nothing more. 3 tall, elegant aliens approached him. They moved like dancers, their long limbs flowing in ways that seemed impossible to human eyes. Their skin was pale blue, almost transparent, and their large eyes held an ancient wisdom that made Jake feel young, despite his 35 years of life and 15 years of fighting. Commander Sullivan, the tallest alien, spoke in perfect English, though his voice had a musical quality that made each word sound like a song. "I am High Counselor Vex High. We welcome you to our world." Jake nodded once. "Counselor, I understand you have a problem with the Vorthic Empire." "Indeed. Please, follow us to the sacred chamber. There is much we must discuss." As they walked through corridors made entirely of living crystal, Jake studied his surroundings with a soldier's eye. The walls were beautiful but weak. The ceilings were too high, offering no cover. The passages were too wide, impossible to defend properly. Everything about this place screamed of a people who had never known real war. The sacred chamber was a massive dome filled with floating platforms and streams of light that moved like water through the air. On the highest platform sat a figure that made all the other aliens bow their heads in respect. "Commander Sullivan," Counselor Vex High said softly, "may we present Her Royal Highness, Princess Lyrale, guardian of the ancient knowledge, keeper of the sacred mysteries." Jake looked up at the princess and saw exactly what he expected to see. Another alien royal, probably spoiled and useless in any real fight. She sat in what looked like a high-tech wheelchair. Her lower body covered by flowing robes, cables, and tubes connected her chair to various machines that hummed quietly. Her face was beautiful in the alien way, but her eyes held a sadness that Jake had seen too many times in field hospitals. The princess tried to speak, but only soft sounds came out. A device near her throat glowed, and then her voice emerged from speakers around the chamber. "Welcome to Zephria, human warrior. We have heard much about your people's skill in battle." Jake barely glanced at her. Instead, he turned back to the High Counselor. "Let's talk about your military situation. How many ships does the Vorthic Empire have? What kind of weapons? How many soldiers?" The other aliens in the chamber looked shocked. Nobody ignored the princess, ever. It was unthinkable. But Jake was already walking toward a large display that showed star maps and fleet positions. "The Vorthic have been expanding for 50 years, Counselor Vex High said, clearly disturbed by Jake's behavior, but trying to continue the briefing. "They have conquered 12 systems. Their fleet numbers in the thousands. And your fleet? We have diplomatic ships, trading vessels. We are a peaceful people, Commander. We have never needed weapons." Jake stopped studying the star map and looked directly at the High Counselor. "Then why did you call me? You could have hired any mercenary company. My services cost more because I win wars that can't be won. But I need to know what you're really offering." The aliens exchanged glances that Jake couldn't read. Finally, the High Counselor gestured toward the princess. "Her Highness possesses knowledge that has been passed down through royal bloodlines for thousands of years. Psionic techniques that could turn the tide of any battle. Mental powers that can disable entire enemy fleets." Jake looked at the princess again, this time with mild interest. She was watching him with those large, sad eyes, and he could see intelligence there. But he also saw weakness, fear, and the kind of helplessness that got soldiers killed. "Can't she fight?" he asked bluntly. The chamber fell silent. Several aliens made gasping sounds that might have been their version of shock. "Commander," the High Counselor said carefully, "the princess she requires special care. Her condition." "I didn't ask about her condition. I asked if she can fight." Princess Liralay's artificial voice spoke again. I have trained in the mental arts since childhood. Commander, my physical limitations do not affect my psionic abilities. Jake nodded once, already losing interest. Fine, keep her safe in some bunker. Now, let's talk about real defenses. What kind of manufacturing do you have? Can you build weapons? Do you have anyone who knows how to use them? For the next 2 hours, Jake questioned the aliens about every aspect of their society, their technology, and their resources. He took notes on a simple tablet, asked for detailed maps, and requested meetings with their engineers and scientists. Through it all, Princess Liralee sat silently on her floating platform. Watching him work, the aliens were clearly disappointed by his attitude. They had expected him to be amazed by their princess, to treat her with the reverence that everyone else showed. Instead, Jake treated her like a piece of equipment that might be useful later, but wasn't his immediate concern. Commander, the High Counselor finally said, surely you understand that the princess must be protected above all else. She is the last keeper of the ancient knowledge. If she dies, centuries of wisdom dies with her. Jake looked up from his tablet. Counselor, I've protected a lot of important people. Presidents, generals, religious leaders. They all had one thing in common. They understood that protection means making hard choices. It means treating the protected person like an asset, not a pet. The princess's artificial voice cut through the uncomfortable silence. What kind of hard choices? This time, Jake looked directly at her. For just a moment, she saw something in his eyes that nobody else had ever shown her. He was looking at her like she was a person, not a sacred relic or a tragic figure to be pitied. The kind where I might have to choose between saving you and saving your planet, he said simply. The kind where your comfort matters less than your survival. The kind where being a princess means exactly nothing if you can't contribute to the fight. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers, but Princess Liralee was quiet. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to her like she was responsible for her own fate. Jake closed his tablet and stood up. I'll need 3 days to assess your defenses and meet with your technical people. After that, I'll tell you whether this war can be won and what it will cost you. As he walked toward the exit, he paused and looked back at the princess one more time. Your Highness, he said in the same tone he would use to address any other military asset. I'll want to test those psionic abilities tomorrow. Be ready. Then he was gone, leaving behind a chamber full of confused aliens and one princess who, for the first time in her life, had been treated like a soldier instead of a victim. Jake spent his first day on Zephria walking through the Crystal City, taking notes and shaking his head. The aliens had built everything for beauty, not defense. Their walls were thin, their weapons were ceremonial, and their soldiers were really just guards who had never seen real combat. He was studying a particularly weak section of the outer wall when the attack sirens began to wail. The sound was different from human alarms, more like a song than a warning, but Jake knew what it meant. He grabbed his communicator and called the command center. What's the situation? He demanded. High Counselor Vexhia's voice came through, filled with panic. Vorthic probe ships, 3 of them, coming fast from the outer system. Our defensive platforms are not responding properly. Jake was already running toward the command center. I'm on my way. Don't do anything stupid until I get there. The command center was chaos. Aliens were floating around on their platforms, speaking rapidly in their musical language. Lights were flashing everywhere, and the main display showed 3 red dots moving toward the planet. Report, Jake said as he entered. The probe ships are testing our defenses, Counselor Vexhia explained. They're jamming our communication systems, and our weapons can't lock onto them properly. Jake studied the display. The Vorthic ships were moving in a pattern he recognized, a classic probe attack, designed to test response times and weapon capabilities. They would gather intelligence and then retreat before any real damage could be done. You need to coordinate your defense platforms, Jake said. Stop trying to hit them individually. Create a crossfire pattern. We don't know how, admitted one of the alien technicians. Our weapons were designed for ceremony, not warfare. Jake looked around the command center. and realized these people were going to get themselves killed. They had powerful technology, but no idea how to use it in combat. Then he noticed something interesting. Princess Lyrale was there. Her hover chair had moved to a quiet corner of the command center, and she was working with a small device that showed the same tactical display as the main screen. But her version was different. It showed energy patterns and mental connections that the main display couldn't detect. "Princess," Jake said, walking over to her. The aliens in the command center fell silent. Nobody had ever seen anyone approach the princess so directly during a crisis. "Your device shows psionic connections?" Jake asked, looking at her screen. The princess looked surprised that he was asking her a technical question. "Yes, Commander. I can sense the mental patterns of the enemy pilots, but I don't understand how that helps." Jake studied her display more carefully. "Can you predict where they're going to move next?" Yes, I believe so. Their thoughts show their intentions before they act." "Good. Can your chair interface with the main defense systems?" Princess Lyrale looked confused. "Interface? I don't understand. Can you plug into the weapons computers? Feed them targeting information?" The aliens around them were staring in shock. Nobody had ever suggested that the princess should be directly involved in combat operations. "Commander," High Counselor Vex High said nervously, "the princess cannot be exposed to such risks." Jake ignored him completely. "Princess, I need you to connect your systems to the defense grid. You can see where the enemy ships are going to be. I can calculate the firing solutions. Together, we can hit them." For the first time since Jake had met her, Princess Lyrale looked excited instead of sad. "My chair has universal connection ports, but I've never used them for military purposes." "Today you learn," Jake said simply. "Can you do it?" The princess looked around the command center. Everyone was watching her, waiting to see what she would decide. For years, they had treated her like a precious artifact that needed to be protected. Now this human warrior was asking her to help fight. "Yes," she said, her artificial voice steady and clear. "I can do it." Jake smiled for the first time since arriving on Zephria. "Then let's get to work." The next 20 minutes were like nothing the aliens had ever seen. Jake stood beside the princess's chair, calling out firing patterns and tactical adjustments while she fed psionic targeting data directly into the defense computers. Her mental abilities let her track the enemy ships through their jamming, while his military experience told him exactly when and where to shoot. "Probe Ship 2 is thinking about turning left," the princess said, her eyes closed in concentration. "Defense Platform 7, fire 3 seconds ahead of target trajectory." Jake ordered into his communicator. The energy beam caught the Vorthik ship exactly where Jake had predicted it would be. The alien vessel's shields flared and died, and the ship began spinning out of control. "Excellent," Jake said. "Now, where's Probe Ship 3 going?" "The pilot is confused," Princess Lyrale reported. "He's trying to retreat, but he's not sure which direction is safe." "Perfect. Platforms 4 and 9, bracket fire pattern Delta." "Princess, can you make him more confused?" I've never tried to affect an enemy mind before." "Don't affect it. Just make him see more options than he really has. Make him think every direction is dangerous." Princess Lyrale concentrated harder on her display. Jake could see energy patterns reaching out toward the distant enemy ship. "He's panicking," she said. "He's flying randomly now. All platforms, converging fire on target 3. "Princess, can you predict his panic pattern?" "Yes. He's going to dive toward the planet's surface now." All 6 defense platforms fired at once, their beams converging on empty space. 2 seconds later, the Vorthik probe ship flew directly into the energy crossfire and exploded in a brilliant flash. The third enemy ship, seeing its companions destroyed, turned and fled toward the outer system. The command center erupted in celebration. Aliens were making musical sounds that Jake assumed were cheers, but he was focused on Princess Lyrale. She was staring at her hands as if she had never seen them before. "I did that," she said quietly. "I helped fight them. You did more than help," Jake said. "Without your targeting data, we would have missed all 3 ships. You won that battle." The princess looked up at him, and Jake saw that her eyes were no longer sad. For the first time in years, she looked proud. "Commander," she said, "my chair has many other capabilities that I've never used. Sensor arrays, communication systems, even some weapons that were installed for ceremonial purposes. Could you teach me how to use them properly?" Jake looked at her chair with new interest. It wasn't just a mobility device. It was a command center that had been wasted on ceremonies. "In formal occasions, Princess," he said, "I think you and I need to have a long conversation about what that chair can really do." High Counselor Vex High approached them carefully. "Commander," the princess performed admirably. "But surely you don't intend to put her in danger again." Jake looked at the High Counselor with the same expression he would give a recruit who had asked a stupid question. "Counselor," he said, "your princess just proved she's the most effective weapons operator on this planet. The Vorthik will be back with a real attack force, and when they come, I'm going to need every advantage I can get." He turned back to Princess Lyrale. "Tomorrow, we start real training. You're going to learn how to turn that chair into a weapon of war, Princess." Lyrale smiled, the first real smile anyone had seen from her in years. "Yes, Commander," she said. "I'm ready to learn." 2 weeks after the probe attack, Jake stood in the war room studying reconnaissance reports. The Vorthik Empire was gathering a massive fleet at the edge of the system. Intelligence suggested they would attack within days, not months. "Princess." Lyrale worked beside him, her chair now bristling with additional sensors and communication arrays that Jake had helped her install. She had learned to use her psionic abilities like a military tool, scanning space for enemy thoughts and emotions across impossible distances. "The Vorthik Admiral is confident," she reported, her eyes closed in concentration. "He believes our defenses are weak. He's planning to attack our orbital stations first, then bombard the planet from space." Jake nodded, making notes on his tactical display. "How many ships?" "I count 57 war vessels, plus support ships and troop transports, against our 12 defense platforms and 6 converted trading ships." Jake ran the numbers in his head. "We're going to need to be very smart about this." High Counselor Vex High entered the war room with several other alien officials. They moved in that flowing, graceful way, but Jake could see tension in their movements. "Commander," the High Counselor said, "we must discuss evacuation procedures. The princess must be moved to the deep shelters immediately." Jake didn't look up from his tactical display. "No, I beg your pardon, the princess stays here. We need her sensor abilities in the command center during the battle." The aliens made those gasping sounds again. One of them, an elderly alien with intricate markings on his pale blue skin, stepped forward. "Commander Sullivan," he said in a voice that shook with anger, "Princess Lyrale is the last heir to the royal bloodline. She carries knowledge that cannot be replaced. You cannot risk her life in combat." Now Jake did look up. His eyes were cold and hard. "Counselor, let me explain something about warfare. In a real battle, everyone is at risk. The cook, the mechanic, the communications officer, and yes, even the princess. The enemy doesn't care about your bloodlines or your traditions. They care about winning." Princess Lyrale spoke through her artificial voice system. "I want to stay in the command center. My abilities are most effective when I'm connected to all the sensor networks." "Absolutely not," said another alien official. "Your Highness, you don't understand the dangers involved." Jake's voice cut across the argument like a blade. "She understands perfectly. She's been studying military tactics for 2 weeks. She knows more about this battle than any of you." "But, Commander," High Counselor Vex High pleaded, "if something happens to her, then we lose our best tactical advantage," Jake finished. "Which is exactly why the enemy will target her specifically." The room fell silent. Finally, the elderly alien with the markings spoke again. "Are you suggesting that we use the princess as his bait?" Jake turned to face them all. "I'm suggesting that we use every resource we have to win this war. The princess has abilities that no one else possesses. Hiding her in a bunker is like throwing away our best weapon." "She's not a weapon," the elderly alien shouted. "She's a person, a young woman who has already suffered enough. She's a soldier, Jake said simply, or she can be, if you let her. Princess Lyrale had been listening to this argument with growing anger. Now she spoke, and her artificial voice carried an authority that surprised everyone. Enough. The single word silenced the entire room. I am tired of being treated like a broken doll that needs to be protected. Commander Sullivan is right. I have abilities that can help win this war. I choose to use them. Your Highness, High Counselor Vexhai said desperately, you cannot make such a decision. The Royal Council must. The Royal Council, Princess Lyrale interrupted, consists of people who have never fought a battle in their lives. Commander Sullivan has. I trust his judgment. Jake was studying his tactical display again, but he was listening to every word. The princess had just declared her independence from the traditional power structure of her society. That took courage. Here's the plan, Jake announced. The Vorthik will expect us to hide our most valuable assets. Instead, we're going to put the princess exactly where they can detect her, in the main command center, broadcasting her psionic signature across the entire system. That's insane, breathed one of the officials. That's tactics, Jake corrected. They'll focus their attack on the command center, trying to kill her before she can coordinate our defenses. But they won't expect us to be ready for that focus, Princess. Lyrale was studying the tactical display with new understanding. You want them to come after me specifically. I want them to think they can end the war quickly by taking out our command structure. While they're concentrating on the command center, our orbital platforms will have clear shots at their flanks. And if they succeed, asked High Counselor Vexhai, if they break through to the command center? Jake looked directly at Princess Lyrale. Then the princess and I will make our last stand together. Just like any other soldiers, the alien officials were horrified. They began talking rapidly in their own language, their musical voices rising to an almost frantic pitch. But Princess Lyrale was calm. I accept the plan, she said. Your Highness, you cannot, began the elderly alien. I can and I do, the princess said firmly. For too long, I have been treated as something precious and fragile. Commander Sullivan treats me as something useful and strong. I know which one I prefer. Jake nodded once, showing his approval. Good. Now, we need to modify your chair's defensive systems. If they do break through, you need to be able to protect yourself. What kind of modifications? Princess Lyrale asked. Energy shields, emergency movement systems, maybe some light weapons. Nothing that will slow down your sensor work, but enough to keep you alive if things go wrong. The alien officials continued to protest, but Jake ignored them. He had made his decision based on military necessity, not political considerations. The princess had made her decision based on personal choice, not cultural expectations. Over the next 3 days, they worked together to prepare for the battle. Jake taught Princess Lyrale advanced tactical concepts while she showed him how to integrate psionic warfare with conventional weapons. Her chair became a mobile command center, bristling with sensors, shields, and communication systems. The other aliens watched this preparation with growing unease. They saw their sacred princess being turned into a weapon of war. They saw their careful traditions being thrown aside for military expediency. They saw Jake Sullivan treating their most precious treasure like any other soldier. But Princess Lyrale was happier than she had been in years. For the first time in her life, someone valued her for what she could do, not what she represented. Jake never mentioned her disability, never treated her with special consideration, never looked at her with pity. He looked at her like she was dangerous. On the morning of the 4th day, long-range sensors detected the Vorthik fleet entering the outer system. The battle would begin within hours. Are you ready, Princess? Jake asked as they ran final system checks. Princess Lyrale tested her weapons, checked her shields, and confirmed her sensor connections. Her chair hummed with power and purpose. I'm ready, Commander, she said. Let's show them what we can do. Jake smiled grimly. Let's show them what humans and Zephrians can do together. The first enemy ships appeared on the tactical display. Moving fast toward the planet, the battle for Zephria was about to begin. and at its center sat a princess who had finally been given the chance to fight. The first wave of Vorthok ships had been defeated, but at a terrible cost. 3 of Zephria's 12 defense platforms were destroyed, and 2 more were badly damaged. The converted trading ships had fought bravely, but they were no match for real warships. Only Jake's tactics and Princess Liralay's psionic coordination had saved them from complete destruction. Now, in the quiet hours before the next attack, Jake sat alone in the observation deck, staring out at the debris field that had once been enemy ships. His left shoulder ached, an old injury that always bothered him after intense combat. "Commander?" Princess Liralay's voice came from behind him. Her hover chair moved silently across the crystal floor. Jake didn't turn around. "You should be resting, Princess. The next wave will be bigger." "I couldn't sleep," she admitted, moving her chair to hover beside him. "The other council members came to see me after the battle. Let me guess, they want you moved to the deep shelters. They said you were using me as a weapon. They said you didn't care if I lived or died as long as we won the battle." Princess Liralay's artificial voice was quiet. "They said you were treating me like I was expendable." Jake finally looked at her. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them they were right." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Really, Princess?" Liralee moved her chair closer to his position by the window. "But I also told them that was the first time in my life anyone had treated me like I was worth something in a fight. Everyone else treats me like a treasure that needs to be locked away. You treat me like a soldier who has a job to do. Is that a compliment or a complaint?" "It's a question," Princess Liralee said. "Why do you really treat me this way? And don't tell me it's just military necessity. I've been watching you, Commander. You look at me differently than the others do, but not in the way I expected." Jake was quiet for a long moment, still staring out at the stars. Finally, he spoke. "Princess, how much do you know about human military culture?" "Very little. We Zephrians have been peaceful for centuries, in human armies. There's a principle that keeps soldiers alive. The mission comes first, always. Not the individual, not personal feelings, not even friendship. The mission comes first. Because if the mission fails, everyone dies." Princess Liralee listened carefully. "But that sounds so cold." "It is cold," Jake agreed. "But it works. Do you know why? Tell me." Jake turned to face her directly. "Because when everyone knows they're expendable, everyone fights harder. When everyone knows the mission matters more than their personal safety, everyone takes the risks necessary to win." "But what about caring for your soldiers? What about protecting the people under your command?" "You protect them by giving them the best chance to succeed. You protect them by using their abilities to the fullest. You protect them by treating them like they're capable of handling whatever comes." Jake's voice was steady, but Princess Liralee could hear something deeper in it. "You don't protect them by treating them like they're made of glass." Princess Liralee was quiet for a moment. "Is that why you never ask about my condition? Why you never treat me like I'm fragile?" "Partly." Jake looked back out at the stars. "But there's another reason." "What is it?" Jake rolled his left shoulder, trying to ease the ache. The movement was subtle, but Princess Liralee noticed it. "Your shoulder hurts," she observed. "Old injury. Happened 3 years ago on a mining colony called Kepler 7. Piece of shrapnel tore through the joint during an orbital bombardment." "Did it heal properly?" Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Princess, I have about 30% mobility in that shoulder. On a good day, I can't lift my left arm above my head, and I can't carry anything heavier than a sidearm with that hand." Princess Liralee stared at him. "But you never said anything. You never act like I'm disabled." Jake finished. "That's because I'm not disabled. I'm adapted." "I don't understand." Jake stood up and moved to face her directly. "Princess, 3 years ago, military doctors told me I should retire. They said I couldn't do my job anymore. They wanted to give me a desk position and a medical pension. What did you do?" "I learned to fight with one good arm. I trained twice as hard with my right hand. I developed new tactics that used my strengths instead of my weaknesses. I never reported the full extent of the injury, and I never let it stop me from doing my job." Princess Lyrale was beginning to understand. That's why you treat me the way you do. I treat you the way someone treated me, once, a sergeant named Maria Santos. When I first came back to duty after the injury, everyone else looked at me with pity. They gave me easy assignments. They treated me like I was made of glass. Jake's voice grew softer, but not Santos. She looked at me and said, Sullivan, you still have one good arm and a working brain. That's more than most soldiers have. Now stop feeling sorry for yourself and get back to work. She sounds like a good sergeant. She was the best. She died 2 months later in a stupid accident that could have been prevented if her commanding officer had treated her like a soldier, instead of trying to protect her because she was young and small. Jake's voice hardened. That's when I learned that treating people like they're fragile is the best way to get them killed. Princess Lyrale absorbed this information slowly. So when you look at me, I see someone who has adapted to their circumstances, someone who has abilities that others don't, someone who could be extremely dangerous if they stop thinking of themselves as a victim. Jake met her eyes. I see a warrior who doesn't know she's a warrior yet, but I'm in this chair. I can't walk. I can barely speak without technology. So, you can think, you can fight, you can use abilities that nobody else has. Your chair isn't a limitation. It's a weapon platform. Your artificial voice isn't a weakness. It's a communication system that can't be damaged by combat stress. Jake's voice was firm. Princess, I've seen perfectly healthy soldiers break down and become useless in their first real battle. You coordinated a defense that saved thousands of lives, and you never hesitated once. Princess Lyrale felt something changing inside her. For the first time, she was seeing herself through the eyes of someone who saw strength instead of weakness. The other council members think you don't care about me, she said. The other council members are wrong. I care about you enough to believe you can handle the truth. I care about you enough to give you the chance to be what you're capable of being. Jake looked back out at the stars. Tomorrow, the Vorthik will come with everything they have. I'm going to put you in the most dangerous position on this planet, because that's where you'll be most effective. That's not because I don't care about you. That's because I believe in you. Princess Lyrale sat in her chair, processing everything Jake had told her. Finally, she spoke. Commander, when this war is over, will you teach me more about being a soldier? Jake smiled. A real smile this time. Princess, you're already a soldier. You just needed someone to tell you. Outside the window, enemy ships began appearing on the edge of the sensor grid. The final battle was about to begin. The final Vorthik fleet filled the display screens like a swarm of angry insects. Over 200 ships, including massive dreadnoughts that could destroy entire cities with a single bombardment. Against them, Zephria had 7 functioning defense platforms and 3 badly damaged trading ships. They're not even trying to be clever this time, Jake observed, studying the enemy formation. Pure overwhelming force. They plan to crush us through sheer numbers. Princess Lyrale's sensors were working at maximum capacity, scanning the approaching fleet. Their admiral is confident. He believes we cannot possibly survive this attack. He's probably right, Jake said calmly, unless we use the Sunfire Protocol. High Counselor Vex High, who had been listening to their tactical discussion, made a sound of horror. Commander, you cannot be serious. The Sunfire Protocol has never been tested. It could destroy the entire planet. What is the Sunfire Protocol? Princess Lyrale asked. Jake pointed to a display showing ancient Zephrian weapon systems buried deep in the planets. Crystal Core. Your ancestors built a planetary defense weapon thousands of years ago. It uses the planet's crystal matrix to focus solar energy into a beam that can destroy entire fleets. But the activation process, High Counselor Vex High began, requires a direct psionic interface with the planet's core systems. Jake finished. Someone has to connect their mind directly to the weapon and guide the targeting manually. The energy feedback will probably kill whoever tries it. Princess Lyrale studied the weapon specifications on her display. Probably. The last time anyone tried to activate it was over 3,000 years ago. That person died instantly. But the weapon worked. It destroyed an entire invasion force in one shot. The command center fell silent except for the humming of computers and the distant sound of alarms as the enemy fleet drew closer. There has to be another way, High Counselor Vexhai said desperately. Jake shook his head. We've run every simulation. Conventional weapons won't stop a fleet this size. The Sunfire Protocol is our only chance. Then we're doomed, said another. Alien official. No one can survive a direct interface with that much energy. Princess Lyrale had been studying the technical specifications quietly. Now she looked up. I can do it. The room erupted in protests, but Jake held up his hand for silence and explained. My chair's biosupport systems are designed to handle massive energy flows. My psionic training includes techniques for channeling power far beyond normal limits. And most importantly, she paused, looking directly at Jake. I'm already connected to dozens of machines that help me function. Adding one more connection won't be fundamentally different, Princess. This is not like your normal equipment, High Counselor Vexhai pleaded. The energy levels involved could tear your mind apart. Maybe, Princess Lyrale agreed. But Commander, Sullivan has taught me that sometimes you have to take calculated risks to protect what matters. Jake was running calculations in his head. The weapon platform is 3 kilometers underground. You'd have to take your chair down through the access tunnels to make a direct connection. Those tunnels haven't been used in centuries, another official protested. They're probably collapsed or flooded. Then we clear them, Jake said simply. How long do we have? Princess Lyrale checked her sensors. The fleet will be in bombardment range in 4 hours. That's enough time. Jake turned to the alien officials. I need engineering teams working on the tunnel access immediately. Princess, we need to modify your chair's systems to handle the interface. Connection Commander, High Counselor Vexhai, said quietly, you're asking us to send our princess to her death. Jake looked at the display showing the approaching enemy fleet, then at Princess Lyrale, who was already working on system modifications. No, he said, I'm asking her to save her people. There's a difference. The next 3 hours were a blur of activity. Engineering teams blasted through collapsed tunnel sections while technicians worked frantically to prepare Princess Lyrale's chair for the interface connection. Jake coordinated the preparations while running continuous tactical simulations. The approach tunnel is clear, reported an engineering team leader. But the weapon chamber is filled with raw crystal growth. We'll need to cut through it. Do it, Jake ordered. Princess, how are your system modifications coming? Almost complete, she replied, her artificial voice steady. Despite the magnitude of what she was preparing to do, Commander, if this doesn't work, it will work, Jake said firmly. You're the most capable person on this planet, Princess. If anyone can control that weapon, it's you. As the enemy fleet entered the outer system, Princess Lyrale began her descent through the ancient tunnels. Jake accompanied her, along with a small team of technicians. The tunnels were narrow and filled with strange crystal formations that glowed with their own light. These crystals are beautiful, Princess Lyrale observed as her chair navigated the winding passages. They're also incredibly dangerous, Jake replied. Each one contains enough energy to power a city. You're about to connect to all of them at once. They reached the weapon chamber just as the first enemy ships entered orbital bombardment range. The chamber was vast, filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with inner light. At the center was a raised platform with connection ports that matched Princess Lyrale's chair systems. Enemy fleet in position. Came a report through Jake's communicator. They're beginning to charge their weapons. Princess Lyrale positioned her chair on the platform and began connecting interface cables. Commander, if I don't survive this, you will, Jake interrupted. Because you're too stubborn to die. I've seen you work. Princess, you don't give up. The final connection was made, and immediately Princess Lyrale's chair began glowing with the same inner light as the crystals. Around them, her eyes closed as her mind reached out to touch the weapon system. I can feel it, she whispered. All that power. It's like touching a star. Can you control it? Jake asked. Double quotes, yes. I can see the enemy ships clearly now. Each one is like a dark spot against the light. Her voice grew stronger. Targeting the lead dreadnought, On the surface, every crystal structure on the planet began to glow brighter. Energy flowed through the crystal matrix like water through a vast network of channels, all of it converging on the weapon chamber. Firing, Princess Lyrale announced. A beam of pure solar energy erupted from the planet's surface, reaching across space to strike the lead Vorthic dreadnought. The massive ship simply vanished, destroyed so completely that not even debris remained. But Princess Lyrale wasn't finished. The weapon's targeting system was now fully under her control, and her psionic abilities let her track every enemy ship simultaneously. Targeting remaining capital ships, she said, her voice echoing strangely in the crystal chamber. Beam after beam of destructive energy reached out from Zephria, each one finding its target with perfect accuracy. Within minutes, the entire Vorthic invasion fleet was destroyed. As the weapon powered down, Princess Lyrale slumped in her chair, exhausted but alive. The glow faded from the crystals around them, and normal lighting returned to the chamber. "Princess?" Jake asked, moving to check her condition. She opened her eyes and smiled, a real, triumphant smile. "I'm alive, Commander, and we won." Jake smiled back. "Yes, we did. How do you feel?" "Like a warrior," she said simply. 6 months later, Jake stood in the same command center where he had first met Princess Lyrale. But everything was different now. The room bustled with activity as Zephrian military officers, trained by Jake and led by the princess herself, coordinated the defense of 3 neighboring systems. Princess Lyrale moved through the command center with confidence, her chair now openly bristling with weapons and sensors. She was no longer hidden away as a precious relic. She was the supreme military commander of the Zephrian Defense Force. "The refugee convoy from Altair 7 has arrived safely," she reported to Jake. "Our escort ships report no enemy contact." "Good. Any word on the Vorthic remnant fleets?" "They're avoiding our territory entirely. Apparently, word has spread about." "What happened to their invasion force?" Jake nodded, satisfied. It was time for him to move on to his next assignment. But first, he had something to say. "Princess, it's been an honor serving with you." She looked at him with those intelligent eyes that no longer held sadness. "Commander, thank you for seeing what I could become instead of what I appeared to be." "Thank you for proving me right," Jake replied. "You've become exactly what I thought you could be. One of the finest military commanders I've ever worked with." As Jake prepared to leave Zephria, he reflected on what he had learned. Sometimes the greatest act of respect was to expect someone to be strong. Sometimes the kindest thing you could do was to treat someone like they were capable of greatness. Princess Lyrale had never needed to be protected from the world. She had needed to be given the chance to protect it herself. And that, Jake thought as his transport ship lifted off from the crystal platform, was the most human lesson of all. That true strength came not from what you could do despite your limitations, but from what you could accomplish because of them.